Hello, good afternoon. You're watching the Sunday Politics for Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. Coming up today, we look at both campaigns ahead of Thursday's historic referendum on whether 4 Yorkshire cities should have elected mayors. In 4 days' time, voters in Bradford, Leeds, Sheffield and Wakefield will decide whether they want a directly elected mayor to run their local services, changing forever the way democracy is delivered in those cities. People in Doncaster will also decide whether they want to keep their elected mayor. Our guest today from the Yes campaign, Jonathan Straight, a Leeds-based entrepreneur. From the No campaign, Jack Scott, a Labour councillor from Sheffield. And we have a genuinely undecided voter. Chris Glenn chairs the Federation of Small Businesses in West Yorkshire, and he's based in Wakefield. Jonathan Straight, tell us why we should have directly elected mayors.
Well, I was born and bred in Leeds. I founded my business in Leeds, and I'm passionate about the city. And I think Leeds needs a voice locally and internationally, and a directly elected mayor is a great way to achieve that.
Jack Scott, why should people vote no in Thursday's referendum?
I think there are lots of reasons why a directly elected mayor will be bad for Sheffield and bad for the other cities in Yorkshire, the main one of which, it puts far too much power into the hands of one person who you can't get rid of.
Chris Glenn, tell us why you're undecided.
I think at the moment there isn't enough information out there about the mayor, about what the mayor will do, what his powers will be, and it's not necessarily going to be the same as the other mayors that there are throughout the country at the moment. And you can have the situation whereby you have a lot of power in one person's hand, which can be a good or bad thing. We just don't know how they'll use it.
OK, so let's hear in more detail why voters should take part in this referendum. Our cameras went out onto the streets of Leeds with Samuel Fisher, the campaign director of the Yes Lobby.
We've been invited by The Guardian to be a panel member on their live debate about elected mayors and the vote on 3rd of May. I am running an independent campaign. I'm not representing a political party or particular interest group. I'm a small business owner in Leeds, but he's passionate about the city and felt that it's such an important issue that somebody needed to stand up and say something about it. Now, with a limited budget, we can't go around leafleting the city, we can't put up posters. So the benefits of social media are that you can reach people who you wouldn't otherwise meet in a short space of time, and with limited financial resources that we have. So great, we've just come out from the online discussion on the Guardian website, but of course we've got to meet some real people and see what they think. It'd be great for raising the profile of Leeds as a hub of Yorkshire.
I don't think it would make any difference whatsoever.
Okay.
I think they'd be as useless as they have always been.
They're voting no.
You'll be voting no?
Yeah.
Is that a definite?
It's a definite no.
So be able to bring things together, make things happen, raise the profile of the city. Yeah, absolutely.
You have to elect a person who is from the city,
Yeah.
who is born and bred in Leeds.
There have been many visits from ministers and lords from all parties coming to the cities in Yorkshire promoting the case for a mayor.
The strong argument for having a mayor is democracy. At the moment, people do not know who the leader of their council is. Only 1 in 7 people can name the leader of their council, and half of them get it wrong. Because we have this very indirect way of producing leaders of councils. We've done it in London now for the last 12 years too. It's been a huge success.
This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to bring real change. We believe this will raise the profile of Leeds around the world and be able to deliver prosperity for the city as a whole.
Well, let's go straight to Jack Scott from the No campaign. We heard from Lord Adonis there, former Labour cabinet minister. He said that only 1 in 7 people could name their council leader. Don't cities need a strong figurehead?
Cities absolutely need strong figureheads, and they need really strong leadership as well. If I thought that elected mayors would help to deliver that, then I'd back them in a moment. My belief, and I really do believe this very strongly, is actually that an elected mayor would create an elected dictator who has no checks and balances on them whatsoever, who could do whatever they wanted. Councillors would have no power whatsoever. They wouldn't be able to speak up for their communities, and on top of all of that, there'd be a massive cost as well.
Jonathan Straight, an elected dictatorship?
What is an elected dictator? It's nonsense. if somebody's elected, they're elected democratically. They're put in power by the people to provide a service for the people. And I believe that a mayor for Leeds would provide a great service for Leeds, would put Leeds on the map.
Do you think this campaign has genuinely caught the public's imagination? I mean, when I live in Bradford, where we're having a referendum on Thursday, I haven't had a single leaflet from any of the campaigns.
Certainly the campaign hasn't been particularly well promoted. The fact there's a referendum hasn't been particularly well promoted. I picked it up through watching our Twitter feed at the office, and I think it's really social media and that kind of thing that's propagated this rather than the more conventional forms of promotion.
Now, it's interesting, isn't it? You're using Twitter. The Yes campaign's very reliant on social media and Twitter, but doesn't that alienate a large section of the population who aren't involved with that kind of thing?
I wouldn't say that was the only way that the issue was being promoted. Certainly this is a more conventional form of media. Twitter is a good way of engaging with large numbers of people, and I wouldn't be dismissive of it as a form of communication.
I think I can only speak about the campaign we've had in Sheffield, but certainly we've been out doing more traditional campaigning, knocking on doors, delivering leaflets, talking to people in the city centre and in their communities. And one of the things that people have told me really clearly is that they aren't very interested in this, and that's not just a coincidence. That isn't something that's just happened. The reason, certainly in Sheffield, that people aren't interested in this is actually because, by and large, they're quite happy with the system that we've got at the moment. We've seen tremendous progress in our northern cities, in Leeds, Bradford, Manchester, Sheffield. They've had a fantastic decade, and all of the improvements that we've seen were achieved without a mayor.
You really think people are genuinely happy with what goes on at the town halls at the moment?
I can only talk about what people say to me. What people say to me is, we've got a mayor already, we've got a civic mayor who helps to be the figurehead of a city. Why would we change that when it's a system that we have had for 150 years? And people also say that those checks and balances that are on a current leader of a council at the moment are really important, and why would we get rid of that?
Chris Glenn, what do you make of what you've heard from the Yes campaign's argument?
I think that there's some valid things within there, but I think that still it's a case of balancing up. There's always arguments against the same things that they're saying. And yes, having a single person that can drive these things forward, can be the thing. But once again, it's the checks and balances side of it. Is if you get the right person in, I think you probably would have some great times with a mayor. But I think if you get the wrong person in, there's the danger that they could make a whole lot of mess before they're gone in 4 years' time.
Therein lies the danger of democracy. But would it help you as a businessman to know exactly who was running your city?
I think it probably would, because I think at the moment there are so many different sort of government agencies and different people involved within the councils and things like that, and sometimes it is difficult to know who is actually doing what, and sometimes there are so many things that overlap each other. When you talked about education and skills, there are so many different places that deal with education skills, it's sometimes hard to know which one it is that you actually need to speak to.
But I think that's a really important point, actually, because all an elected mayor is, it doesn't get rid of the councillors, it doesn't get rid of the cabinet, it doesn't get rid of the MPs or any of the quangos or anything else. All an elected mayor does is add another layer of bureaucracy.
OK, well, let's hear more about why Jack's campaign wants to keep the status quo in our town halls.
So we'll look at Jamie, everyone look at Jamie. Jamie! What we're saying very clearly is that we don't think Sheffield needs an elected mayor, and talking to people, they're very clear that they don't want one. And I don't think these arguments apply just to Sheffield. I think the big problems that you get with an elected mayor apply in Doncaster, Wakefield, Bradford, Leeds. This isn't just about Sheffield, our campaign. We're opposed to an elected mayor anywhere.
Are you for it or are you against it?
I'm whatever David Blunkett and Labour's for, against it, isn't it? Is that against it? Well, I'm against it. Yes, I am.
Well, it's an extra layer of government that's been imposed with a salary of around about, I think the typical figure is £70,000. That's more than the leader and deputy leader put together in Sheffield, for example. I can't see how having an extra layer of bureaucracy on a high salary can possibly lead to anything other than an increase in costs. And bear in mind that an elected mayor would have the power to adopt numerous advisors to help them who wouldn't necessarily be existing councillors, and that all the existing councillors will continue in their posts. I can't see that this is anything other than a recipe for an increase in costs at a time when council budgets are being hit hard.
The mayor would get more money than two MPs' money put together.
Yes, that's right.
Yes. So.
Are you going to vote for a mayor or against a mayor?
Okay.
Against the mayor. Thank you very much. See you later. Some of the feedback we're getting from people, it's been really interesting. There's a whole range of reasons why people are telling us they don't want a mayor. A lot of people don't know there's a referendum on, and a lot of people, to be very honest, aren't that bothered that there's a referendum. What people are saying to me is that the system we've got at the moment has worked for hundreds of years and it isn't broken. The other thing people say to me a lot in Sheffield, probably more than other places in Yorkshire, is actually that there's some big problems with mayors. So in Doncaster, a whole range of problems that you get with an elected mayor. And so I think that's a factor in how people are going to vote on Thursday.
3rd of May, don't forget. I won't. Thank you. Nice seeing you. Bye-bye.
Jonathan, we heard there that the current council system ain't broke, so why does it need fixing?
Well, I think it is broke. Nobody knows who's in charge. The person who's in charge will change from time to time and sometimes with great frequency, so there's no continuity. There's no strategy, there's no leadership, and there's certainly nothing which represents a city on the global stage in the way that an elected mayor, the correct elected mayor, would do.
But we're still going to be electing a whole load of councillors in places like Leeds, Bradford, Sheffield, Wakefield, on top of an elected mayor. So there's a big cost implication here, isn't there?
I don't think so. You're certainly not going to need to pay all of the salaries that you pay without a mayor. And I think a mayor would be value for money. A mayor would bring in investment. You know, look at Leeds. It's the 24th most populous city in the European Union. It's on the top 100 by GDP. It's a gamma city. It's a major centre. It really needs to communicate that to the outside world, to bring in investment, to bring in jobs, and to really make it happen for the place.
How much should a mayor be paid?
I think that depends how good he is. I mean, if he's...
Performance-related pay?
There could be performance-related pay, but if you look at somebody who's leading a business at what they're paid, and somebody who's leading a city, is there really a great deal of difference?
So, for example, Sheffield has a turnover, it has a sort of a profit and loss and everything else of about £1 billion. That's about the same sort of size as a FTSE 100 company. Many of those are paid tens of millions of pounds, those chief executives and those chairs. I just think that a mayor is tremendous extra cost at a time when we need to be putting more money and protecting services from significant cuts.
But you'd be paying a mayor, what, probably between 100 and 200,000, so that's value for money against the tens of millions that somebody would get running a FTSE.
So you could end up paying the mayor more than the Prime Minister? Would that be acceptable to you?
It depends what he's doing and what his mandate is.
This just shows the whole argument, the whole problem I think that there is with elected mayors. There has never been an elected mayor that hasn't massively increased the cost. In Sheffield, for example, the leader and the deputy leader put together aren't paid as much as some of the elected mayors that there are. So there is a massive cost implication. And I don't think the public want to spend more money on politicians. I think the public want more money on services.
If you pay peanuts, with the greatest of respect, you get monkeys.
Well, I just think for me, this is coming down to the really important nub of the issue, which is that leadership is about people. It's not about structures. I think it's really important. If Leeds needs a really effective leader, then the people of Leeds can vote for that at the moment. I don't think that you get fantastic people just because of the voting mechanism that you have.
How can they vote for it? They don't have a say. They vote for councillors, and those councillors in turn choose a leader. That is not giving the people of Leeds the say in who leads the city.
My sense on that really is that at the moment we use exactly the same system to elect the leader of a council as we use to elect the Prime Minister, actually. So we vote for MPs, we vote for councillors, they all get together and decide, depending on who's got the most, who will be the leader or who will be the Prime Minister. I think David Cameron has got quite good name recognition. I think Ed Miliband's got quite good name recognition. I don't think that leadership and really effective leadership to put our cities on the world stage is about structures. It's about getting the right people, and I don't actually think you get that with a mayor.
Can we just look at the question on the ballot paper? Now, there is some controversy about the wording of this. Some claim it's biased in favour of the Let's campaign. Let's see what you think about it. The question that voters will be faced with is, how would you like your city council to be run? By a leader who is an elected councillor chosen by a vote of the other elected councillors? This is how the council is run now. Or by a mayor who is elected by voters? This would be a change from how the council is run now. Jack Scott, what do you make of that?
Well, I think it is a biased question, actually. I think it is a question that's trying to prompt people into a yes answer. And for me, that shows the weakness of some of the mayoral arguments, that you have to have a question, that the government is trying to put forward a question that's trying to push people into a yes answer.
Jonathan, do you think the question is fair?
I completely disagree. I actually would say on a first reading of that it probably plays into the no camp, because people are more inclined to keep the status quo than change. What this is saying is if you want a mayor, you've got to change something. And I really don't think it's a good question, and I don't think it plays into the Yes campaign's hands at all.
Chris, what do you make of the arguments put forward by the No campaign?
I think once again there's some valid points there about the potential problems that they could face up. I do object slightly to comparing councils with FTSE 100 companies, because FTSE 100 companies have to grow their business and generate their income. Councils are given it, they just have to spend it. But when we're looking at, once again, we're always against quangos. We don't like additional costs for the sake of it and things like that. But once again, I think it depends on the people. I know there's one of the mayors out there actually reduced his own salary, and he spends less, he drives his own car and things like that as well.
You're talking about Peter Davis in Doncaster?
Yeah, so I think it's a case of, once again, if it's the right people and they've got the right interests at heart, then there is the potential there for them to do well. But at the same time, it is a cost that's involved as well that we end up having to pay.
But are you not worried it puts too much power in one person's hands?
I think once again that could be a positive or a negative. If it's the right person and they use that power wisely, then it could be used to good use. But it's always the potential for abuse at the same time as well. With people working to their own political agendas and things like that, you could end up whereby they haven't got the interest of the city properly at heart. They've got their own political agendas at the heart of it all.
OK, well, as well as the referendum on elected mayors, voters in many council areas across Yorkshire, Lincolnshire and the North Midlands will go to the polls on Thursday. Len Tingle has been taking a look at our election battle. OK, that's the picture in the local elections. Now back to that referendum on elected mayors. Chris Glenn, you were undecided before the start of this programme. How will you vote?
I think at the moment I'm going to need to find out a bit more about it, because I don't think there's enough information out there. I think there are still positive aspects to there being a mayor, but I think at the same time there are some serious downsides as well that also needs to be considered. So I think at the moment I'm going to need to go and find out a bit more about it.
You're still on the fence?
Still on the fence.
Right, OK, gentlemen. How are you going to persuade people like Chris to vote in the referendum? How are you going to persuade people like him to vote your way? Jonathan?
People in a major city like Leeds need to be able to choose their leader to put their city on the map.
Jack Scott?
A mayor adds massive cost. It also makes local government far more difficult, far more complicated, and I think you get less decisive leadership. So I'll be voting no.
How would you sell this to people? Why is this important that they go out and vote?
It's a once-in-a-generation opportunity. It's something where there is an ability to make change and change for the better, and it needs to be done. So people need to get out on Thursday and vote.
And there we must leave that particular debate for today. Jack Scott, Jonathan Strait and Chris Glenn, thank you very much for your time today. So